welcome to Recruiting, Hiring, and Employing Minors. Today's sponsored by the Central Valley Regional HR Hotline. My name is Anna. I'm the Digital Media and Event Strategist here at the California Employers Association. And again, we just want to thank you for joining us live this morning. Before we get into today's training, a couple details to go over with you. So as you see, your audio is muted for today's presentation, but there are going to be lots of opportunities to engage during today's training. If you have questions about the content today, you can put those into the Q&A box or into the chat box at any time, and we'll try to address them as we go. I'll be here the whole time supporting Mary, so if you have a question, we'll make sure that those get answered at the appropriate time in the presentation, or we can handle those at the end for you. Handouts for this training will be dropped into the chat box shortly. So once you see the PDF icon and file name pop up in the chat box, you can click it to download locally to your drive. Again, I'll be watching the chat box, so if you have any questions about accessing that or any issues, I'm happy to help you if you just ping me in the chat. As you saw when you logged on, this webinar is being recorded, so the team from Central Valley will be reaching out to you once the recording is available for playback. So make sure you're active on that email list so that you can be notified when you can watch this recording. And then last but not least, we'll be asking you to share a little bit of feedback with us at the end. So you'll see a slide with a QR code, which is an invitation to share a minute of feedback via a survey. It's 5 questions. It's about 60 to 90 seconds, very, very quick. But the feedback that you share with us really helps us here at CEA. We share it with our partners over at Central Valley, and we just collectively make sure that we are meeting and hopefully exceeding your expectations with trainings like these. So if you could take a minute at the end, we would greatly appreciate that. So now I want to introduce our trainer today. We have Mary Bradford, who is our Senior HR Director, leading us. So you are in great hands, and I'll hand it over to Mary.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna. Appreciate the introduction and welcome everybody. Really glad that you're able to take an hour out of your day to talk about recruiting, hiring, and employing minors, because we're having our practice spring right now. And I know everybody's starting to think about summer because it's been a little toasty in the Valley, which makes us think about hiring employees for maybe seasonal jobs or when kids are out of school. And so that is what we are going to talk about today. The first thing I want to do is thank all of our partners on that Central Valley hotline that we offer. So if you are in the listed counties, as you will see, you've got your own hotline number. And what these different groups have done and workforce development boards have put together this hotline. So you can give us a call anytime you have questions, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. You can give us a call about anything I cover today, as well as lots of other topics: leave of absence, wage and hour, harassment prevention, managing all those things that you have to manage as an employer or help employers manage. So as you'll see, there's several different numbers listed based on the county you might be located in. So make sure you do a screenshot of this or you hold on to the handouts. We do ask that you call the specific county that you're affiliated with. You will see throughout the presentation, we have CEA's main number, which is an 800 number. That's on all the other slides. But we do ask that you contact us through the specific county that you are affiliated with. So hold on to those numbers. And if you are not familiar with who CEA is, we are the California Employers Association. We have been around since the late 1930s, helping businesses manage their employees, just as you're trying to do. And our goal is to provide you with that peace of mind. So we try to take all of the very times confusing labor guidance out there and make it user-friendly. And we do that by providing training just like this, webinars. We also have a very robust website. I encourage you to take a look at our website, which is employers.org. We have newsletters, we have blogs, all sorts of good information out there. We also have links to a lot of state and federal forms. Everyone can access those. There are some areas of our website that are for members only. And so even though you're able to call us on the hotline, you don't have an individual membership with CEA. We do have a slide on that at the end if that's something you're interested in, but you will be able to access a lot on our website, but just not everything. So keep that in mind. If you click on a form and you can't access it, it's probably because it's behind the member portal. But let us know if that's something you're interested in, and we'll be happy to give you some more info. In addition to our membership, we do also offer other trainings. You're welcome to check out our entire training catalog. Lots of great stuff coming up, specifically HR 101, which starts in just a couple of weeks, which is a really nice overall HR program. So if you need some HR help, just let us know. Happy to help you. And last thing before we get into today's presentation is please keep in mind today what I'm talking about, or when you call the hotline, keep in mind CEA, we are not a law firm, so we are not giving you legal advice. We are just providing you with information and resources so that you can make an informed decision on your own. And of course, we always do recommend that you consult an attorney if you ever have a matter of legal significance. All right, so let's jump into hiring all those wonderful younger kids who are looking to start their first job and what you want to make sure you're doing as an employer or as a partner to help them out. So we're going to talk about why you might want to hire a minor, talk about some recruiting best practices, applications and interviewing, and really why hiring a minor is really the same as hiring a regular full-time employee. So we'll talk about the similarities there. Want to give you a couple of tips and tricks for the onboarding process and why that is so important and why you can play such a crucial role in setting an employee, a young employee, up for success. And then we'll talk a little bit about what to expect when working with minors. Might be a little different than working with a seasoned professional, as you can imagine. And then we're also going to talk about some training that's required for people that work with minors. All right, so let's start talking about why in the world you would want to hire a minor. Well, a lot of really good reasons. Minors, younger people, so under the age of 18, new perspective. They can bring in a lot of energy. They can bring in a lot of ideas, different ways of doing things. So you can have some new perspectives. Excuse me, there are those allergies. All right, it can also be quite a nice cost savings because you can often bring these people in at minimum wage. It can give you some nice tax benefits as an employer. And of course, you can think about seasonal employment. Maybe the summertime is your really busy season. Maybe you're in retail. Maybe you're in a different industry where you just need more employees to work during the summer. Great opportunity. Also, internships are another thing to consider. You might be able to work with your local school, and an employee or your employee as a student can also get some school credit. So there's a couple of different options, and I'm going to talk about all of these on our future slides here. So let's start though by talking about interns because we get a lot of questions on this because a lot of people think, oh, I'll just bring someone, I'll call them an intern and I don't have to pay them because they're gaining a lot of job experience. Well, not entirely. So keep in mind in California, in order for someone to be an intern, they need to be receiving school credit through an established course. So it has to be through an accredited school, a vocational training program, that kind of thing. Now they need to work in a position that is not displacing another regular employee. So you can't fire a regular employee to bring in an unpaid intern. You're not supposed to do that. The school or the agency or the training program that you're working with, they really need to oversee that individual who's working for you because again, they're getting some sort of school credit for working for you when it's unpaid. And you also need to make sure you keep a line drawn between an employee and an intern. So you want to make sure that if you have somebody who's coming through you for an internship program, they're not on your benefit program, they're not part of your insurance, they're not on workers' comp because they're all going to be covered under that school program. So you want to make sure you're working with a group that knows what they're doing. If they say, hey, we've got interns for you, or if an individual comes to you and they say, hey, I want to be an unpaid intern and just work for you, you can say, okay, great, we would love that, but are you working through a school? And if they say, no, I'm not working through a school, then we need to take a look at just making them an employee. So we need to be very clear as an employer what the relationship is with that individual. So another question you might be thinking, or maybe you've had come up, is can an intern be paid? So can an intern who's receiving school credit get paid for working for you? Sure, they can. But keep in mind, then you're kind of crossing another line. So yes, they're an intern, maybe they're getting some school credit, but then they're also becoming an employee, which means they're going to get a W-2. So they're going to be on your payroll and they'll be reportable as an employee. And all of those labor laws are going to apply to them because they are on your payroll. So this is an opportunity for you to have a conversation maybe with your CPA, your bookkeeper, your CFO, whoever's the person in your organization you would work with, and find out, hey, do we want to just have someone who's an unpaid intern getting school credit and that's the relationship, or are we going to also pay them? And kind of look at the pros and cons and decide really what's best for your organization. Now, when it comes to cost savings, as you know, when an employee starts out and they don't have a lot of experience, we're looking at entry level positions. That can make sense to pay them a lower level. So that's where they're going to receive that minimum wage because they don't have a lot of experience or background. So that certainly makes sense there. So we're looking at some cost savings where maybe we can bring someone in at minimum wage. We're going to start to train them, give them some great skills, and then you can, of course, always bump them up, but again, a lot of these are going to be entry level positions. Now, when it comes to benefits, this is where we have to take a look at a couple of different things. Some benefits that they will be required to receive by law when they're your employee and they're working for you and receiving a salary. So, paid sick leave, for example, everybody needs to receive that regardless of how many hours that they're working for you. But other benefits, they may not necessarily be qualified to receive. So, for example, if you're bringing in somebody and they're only working 20 hours a week for you, and your medical benefits are available for employees who work 30 hours a week or more. So that individual who's an entry level or a minor who's coming to work for you may not even be eligible for those benefits. Now, most of them are probably going to be on their parents' benefits anyway, but you never know. They might need to have their own benefits. But if that's not something that you offer based on the number of hours they work, then you're maybe looking at some potential cost savings there. Also, when it comes to vacation policies, for example, remember vacation is at the discretion of the employer. You can set up policies again based on the number of hours they work. So if you've got a minor who's coming in an entry level part time position, 20 hours a week, may not be eligible for your vacation benefits. So they may not receive those as well. So you really do want to take a look at really what the role this person will have, how many hours they're going to work, and how that applies to your own specific benefit offerings that you have. And of course, a lot of times employees or minors are only working for temporary assignments. So they're just here for summer or just available for the summer, or maybe extended holiday periods. Maybe you're looking to bring on a minor to work during spring break. A lot of people have spring break coming up in April. Maybe you could use a couple of extra employees and you can bring someone on for a week. So there are some options, again, just to take a look at. You want to make sure you're determining what kind of employee you need, how many hours they're going to work for you, what are their roles and responsibilities, what benefits might they be eligible for, and decide really what's going to be the best for your company. Now, the other nice thing is even if you bring someone on for a week over spring break, for example, or you bring them on for a short term over summer vacation coming up, that's a nice way that you can have a good relationship with someone and they work out well for you and you rehire them for subsequent temporary jobs or these future summers where they might be available, or even they might be in high school now, but when they head off to college or they graduate from high school, you might have somebody who's already ready to work and come back to your organization. So it's a nice way to try employees out too, and again, help them train and learn some of those good skills. So there's lots of advantages for you as a company. It really can be kind of a year-round recruiting tool. I know we're coming up to spring and summer, and that's where a lot of times you're bringing on some of these workers. But a lot of schools now have big breaks over Thanksgiving, certainly over Christmas time. Sometimes schools are doing 3 weeks off during Christmas or the winter holidays. That could be another time where you can bring somebody back for a short-term assignment where they're already trained and they kind of know what your business is and they've got some experience. Another great advantage is you're really training tomorrow's workforce, and this is your opportunity to help people and teach them some good foundational skills. So as they go into the work world, they had a great start, and you can be that great start for them. Again, as I mentioned before, this can help out establishing college relationships with somebody. Maybe they're going to come back over their college breaks. As you know, lots of colleges, especially in California, if you're not familiar, some colleges are on the quarter system, some are on the semester system. Some of them have very long breaks, especially if an employee takes a quarter off from college. You might be able to get somebody for 3 or 4 months. So there's lots of flexibility there and bringing them back when they're in their college years. It can also help your organization. If you've been on Instagram, you've probably seen some of those fairly funny videos. It started in England, I think, where it was very kind of established older people who were saying text or copy that had been written by their interns. And that's what they said. These are by our teenage interns. And they were very funny. But it really increased their exposure on social media and they got a lot of likes. And that's a good way just to say also, hey, at our company, we like to employ minors and we want to help a good start out for you in your career. So it can be a good word of mouth or social media, however you do it, but it can be really positive there. And again, that's giving back to the community. You're helping out your local workforce, getting them started in their first job and starting them out on that road to success. So let's talk a little bit about bringing your employees on and really what you want to do. The first thing we always recommend when you're hiring someone is you really need to figure out, what do I need this person for? Is this truly just a 3-week assignment that I need somebody, and an intern, or excuse me, a minor might be a good fit for that? Or is this a position that I need them for 3 months, but I really like somebody back for a couple of weeks over Christmas and I'd like them back in spring, or whatever it is? So think about, is this a seasonal, or could this be a year-round position where maybe it's just somebody who I need 10 hours a week or 15 hours a week, and I need them throughout the school year? So figure out what you need, figure out the days and the hours, keeping in mind, of course, there are some restrictions on that with minors, which we will talk about. You need to figure out the specific skills. What are you looking for? Keeping in mind, again, if you're looking for somebody who is great at social media, you're probably going to find it in a minor. But keeping in mind, they may not have all those other skills that perhaps you and I grew up learning. So you might have to train a little more, but maybe they've got a background or an interest in that, and that's a wonderful fit for that. And then you also need to figure out, are there some physical requirements for this particular position? Will there be lifting, pulling, pushing, all of those kind of things? Which is why we always recommend you want to create a job description for any position. If it's for a minor, if it's for a regular full-time position, whatever it is. We recommend you have a job description, because when you go to interview any individual, you want to give them a copy of the job description and say, hey, these are the essential functions of the job. These are the roles and responsibilities. Is there any reason you wouldn't be able to meet all of these? Do you have any concerns or questions? That's what we recommend. And one of the other things you want to include are physical requirements for this position. You also, in job description, should list, is this an hourly position? Is this a salary position? For all of your minors that are working for you, they're all going to be hourly, non-exempt, of course. And then this is where you can put in information about work days, the hours, all of that, is it seasonal, temporary, all of that information. And then, of course, we always say other duties as assigned, because that is something you want to include with every job description, so you have flexibility to change things if you need to. For those of you that might be CEA members, I think I noticed a couple of CEA members on our attendee list. You, of course, know that you have full access to all of our toolkits, which are our resource guides. So those are out there for you. It takes you step by step through how to put together a job description. And then, of course, you can also access the builder on CEA University. Now, when it comes to advertising the position, remember, it's a very different world. When I first started in HR just a couple of years ago, where we used to have to post only in newspapers because those were the only options, we know it's very different now. So the first thing I would recommend is post internally, because you might have coworkers or workers that have teenage kids that would love to come in and learn some job skills, or maybe they have a neighbor or a friend or whoever it is. Word of mouth is a great way to talk about these jobs. And then, of course, you can advertise externally. You can do it through trade associations if that's appropriate for your business. You can do it on LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter. I have 2 teenagers right now who are 17, and they have found both of their jobs through Indeed, which sounds very grown up to me. But that's how a lot of high school kids are finding jobs now. They're finding and applying online through Indeed. So if that's working out for you, great. You can also post on any other social media, your own social media accounts. You can certainly use America's Job Centers. That's a free way that you can post. So lots of good options. And we do have a toolkit on this as well, recruiting and hiring, that goes a little deeper into some of these if you need to access that on your website too. So when it comes to interviewing our potential employees, remember, we recommend for every single position you have a interviewee fill out an application. We say the same thing for interns as well as for your part-time employees. Just get an application on file. It's a good thing to have. You want to ask, as you go through that interview process, what interests you about this job? What caught your eye? Why do you think you would be great in this role? They may not have had a last job or a prior job that you can ask them too much about, but even if they've been involved in school activities, so if they have played sports, if they have done babysitting, if they have done dog sitting or animal care. You can ask them about their experience with that and what they felt that they did well or what they learned from those experiences. So you can still get some information to find out a little bit about their character and their background. And that's another reason why you want to have that job description. Give them a chance to take a look at it and say, what questions do you have? Or how can I help you understand what this role would be like? So make sure you're really, again, it's behavioral interviewing. You're trying to keep that two-way dialogue going so you can learn about this person as much as you can. Now, of course, the same with your minors, anybody that you are interviewing, we never ask about protected classifications. We don't ask about economic background. Remember, we can't ask, do you have a car? What you can ask is, do you have reliable transportation so that you can be at the office between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Those are questions that are fine because, again, they might be getting a ride from a parent. They might be biking there. They might be using Uber or Lyft or something like that. You don't have to be involved in how they are getting there. All you want to ask is you want to make sure that they are able to get there for the hours that you need them. For those individuals that you don't select, I do recommend that you send a thanks but no thanks letter or email or text, however you're communicating with them. Better yet, if you can call them, I think that's nice, especially for people that are just kind of starting out, and thank them for applying. And you can just say, you know, we found another candidate for this position, but we really are glad that you applied. Consider applying again next summer, or we'll be doing more temporary jobs over the holidays, whatever's appropriate for you. But it's just a nice way to kind of close the loop on that. And again, show yourself as a very professional organization that's looking out for individuals, wish them well. And also, if you know of other positions that might be available, or even if you've heard of other companies in the area that are looking for other temporary workers or minors that could work for them, you could say, well, you know, didn't work out here, but I actually have a friend who has a retail store. I know they're hiring. You might want to check into that. Perfectly fine to say, and kind of a nice way to help them out for that next step as they continue to look for a job. All right, so here are the 3 main steps once you find that wonderful minor who's going to work for you. You're going to make them a job offer. Then you're going to get that work permit, which is required for anyone under 18, and then you're going to go through that onboarding process. So we always recommend you put together an offer letter. Again, this can be a regular letter, or this can be a text or an email. Or a couple of those options. Those are all fine. You want to say, welcome to the organization. You want to tell them, and here's what I will tell you from my own teenager experience. They get a little overwhelmed sometimes in those interviews. And when they come home and you say, oh, what's the name of your supervisor? And they just give you a blank stare look. This is why it's nice to send a follow-up letter. Say, welcome to the organization. You're going to be working 3 days a week from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Your title is this. Your supervisor's name is this, because I promise you they will forget. And you can let them know what benefits they might receive. Paid sick leave, for example. You can tell them when they're going to get paid. Kids love to know when their first payday is. They live for it. You can tell them their first day that they're supposed to be there, what time they're supposed to be there. And just like a regular employee, but sometimes you might need just a little more handholding for the minors, because again, it's their first time and they're going to feel super overwhelmed. If you do reference checks, those kind of things, you can have a contingency statement. Normally that doesn't happen with minors, but you can include that if you need to in your offer letter. Now, here is the work permit process. Since I just went through this again this past week, it's very fresh in my mind for me, but here are the steps that you need to take. You have to get an application. You can get it from your child's school, or your child can pick one up, or you can download it. And Anna is going to drop into the chat box a couple of links for you from the DIR site. One of them, thank you so much, Anna, is a link to the work permit, although every school will be able to get this for you. So here's your role if you are a parent, or if you're helping your minors figure out how to do this, you will say your parent has to help fill out part of this work permit. So the student will fill out their section with their information, a little bit of school information. Then the parent fills out their information, name, they have to sign it with a date saying it's okay for my child to work. Then the business is going to fill out part of it. They're going to fill out their information. So for example, one of my kids works at Hollister, which is a retail clothing store. So I filled out the portion My daughter filled out her portion. She took it into the business, into the store. The manager filled out their portion saying, yes, this person's going to work for me. And then the child takes that paperwork to the school, and then the school will issue a work permit. Then that permit's given to the student, and then the student takes it back to the business. So you have to go through all those steps. So it doesn't just happen automatically. Sometimes schools need a couple of days to process it, depending on who does that in the office. And then once that is returned, the work permit, the official work permit is returned back to the organization. They are going to hold on to it. Of course, you can get a copy if you need to it as well, if you're a parent. The work permit is very helpful because it has a lot of information. It tells the business and the student the number of hours they can work, which days of the week they can work, because there are restrictions. It's all based on their age, and it's based on the day of the week, if it's a school day or not. You also can, sometimes there might be other limitations or restrictions. The school will list those all out, so make sure you pay attention to those. And then the permit will expire 5 days after the start of the next school year. Sometimes there are other expiration dates on there. So if you are the business, you want to make sure you take a look at that. Because I will tell you, my daughter, the business, her employer just came to her and said, oh, we realized yours expired a couple months ago, and she had forgotten about it, of course. And so she had to go hurry and get a new one because she wasn't able to work until she had a new one on file. So be careful with that and make sure you do check those every school year to make sure you've got an up-to-date one. All right, so let's start talking about that new hire, bringing them on process. Is it okay to send new hires their paperwork to complete before they come into their first day of work so that they can start working right away? And do you need to pay them? Well, let me tell you this. Anytime you send your employees paperwork and say, I want you to sign this, or I want you to fill this out, you are directing them to do something, which means they're under control, which means that's compensable time. So here's what I would recommend to you. Wait until the employee's first day of work to complete any documents, to complete their first part of the I-9, which we'll talk about here in just a second, to fill out their W-4, their DE-4, all of that information. Make sure you just do that on their first day of employment, because if you send it to them a week before and say, I need you to fill this out and bring it with you on your first day, as soon as they're filling that out, they're actually on the clock. So I wouldn't want you to be on the hook for needing to pay them extra. All right, so when it comes to hiring these minors, it is exactly the same as hiring any regular full-time adult employee. So you've got to give them all of the forms and notices that are required. We do have a new hire sheet, check sheet on the website. You're welcome to access that anytime you want to. You need to make sure they review policies, all the acknowledgements. That means your harassment prevention, your injury illness prevention plan, your workplace violence prevention plan. All of those different documents need to come back to you. If you offer direct deposit, you can have them complete that paperwork. A lot of minors probably already have their own account set up. Many of them don't, so keep in mind you might still be providing them with a paper check. Any trainings that are required, HPT, remember, if they're working for you, they need to have that harassment prevention training. It's just going to be an hour for them. I'd recommend you do that part of that new hire orientation. And then if for some reason you pay training time at a lower wage, so for example, if you're paying your minor $20 an hour, but they're going to get minimum wage for training time, you do have to let them know about that beforehand, that they're going to be receiving a lower rate of pay, just like every other employee that works for you. All right, true or false? The onboarding process occurs only on the employee's first day when you get all those document signs, and then you are done. Of course, we all know this is false. Minors are just the same as any other employee. We want this to be an ongoing process. Now, some of these individuals, maybe they are just going to work for you for the summer, but you might have a lot of minors that are going to work for you throughout the school year. So they're just a shorter hour per week employee, and keep that in mind. Again, this is really your opportunity to help foster their learning of what the work world is like and really help them to have a successful path. So make sure you do check-ins with them after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. We recommend that for all of your employees. Check in, see how their training is doing, make sure they understand everything. Check in with their supervisor if you are not their supervisor and say, hey, how are things going? Are there things that we should change in our onboarding process when we're bringing minors on to help them learn or make sure they're learning everything they need to learn? Are there things we forgot or we skipped? And just really kind of take a look at that individual as a whole. Did they receive the training they need? And also, did we as an organization provide the best training for them? So make sure you're checking into those things. Couple of other best practices when it comes to hiring your employees. Make sure, as I said before, an offer letter is great if you can send that to them. If that's via text or kind of a summary text that you send to them, that's perfect too. But communicate before that first day. Check in with them and confirm that the date and the time that you want them there. Make sure everybody's clear on what those expectations are. Also, make sure you introduce them to their supervisor or their manager, who their teammates are, who they're going to be working with. I know for a lot of minors, especially my kids that are both in retail, they're working with different people all of the time. So those first couple of shifts, you might need to kind of introduce them to a couple of more or other people, and also just encourage your other employees to introduce themselves to new workers, especially new minors. And it's good to say, hey, my name is this, and here, this is my role, or this is my position, or this is what I do, just so people start to know each other a little better. Because keep in mind, again, especially when you're working with minors, some of them are very shy. This is their first job. They're going to feel overwhelmed. So kind of coach your other employees to make sure that they are really welcoming them as well. If you can assign a mentor or kind of a buddy that can show them around or show them the ropes, that's a great thing to do. I know that may not work at all of your organizations, but anything you can do to help them feel more comfortable as they start is a great way to set them up for success. Also, you want to make sure you set clear expectations. A lot of kids don't know anything about working, and it's not always conversations they might have with their parents, something that may not come up. But you certainly want to make sure you explain to them, this is when we take breaks. This is how long you get for a break. Here's how you clock in and clock out to start and end your workday. Here's who you need to talk to if you have questions. Here's the number of who you should contact. You really sometimes have to break it down for them to make sure that they understand what they need to do and what their role is. And also, you want to talk with them about protections. Of course, we talked about harassment prevention, which is always important, but you want to remind them, hey, if you don't understand something, if you're confused by something, if something makes you uncomfortable or concerned, whatever it is, come and talk to me, or come and talk to this person who's a supervisor, or this person who's HR, whatever it is for your organization. Just let them know that you want to hear if something is not going right, or if they have questions or concerns, because kids are afraid to ask questions. It's horrible to look uncool. And so anything you can do to let them know, hey, you're just learning, we're all making mistakes, I want to make sure you understand what's going on, really can be very, very helpful for them. And it goes a long way. I've seen it with my own kids, different managers and supervisors they had, and it's really, they can make or break a job for them. So anything you can do, if it's your role, or again, train your second line, your lead people, whatever it is, just to let them know there's a lot of things they can do to make it be a really, really good experience for those kids who are just starting out. So here is the list of required hiring forms. As I mentioned before, we've got a kind of a checklist on the website at employers.org. You're welcome to access that. But if you're hiring a new employee or a couple of new employees, we actually have a new hire packet that contains all of these forms in a PDF. It's all just like zipped together, so it's all connected. Makes your life really easy if that's something that you need. Just take a look at our CEA store on our website. You can just purchase it. It gets automatically sent to you, so you have all of the forms that you need. Because keep in mind, with minors, just like our regular employees, they have to receive all of these forms, which I know it's overwhelming, but yes, they do. So that means they need to fill out an I-9, which we're going to talk about next. Of course, they need a W-4 and a DE form, just for all of those fun taxes that we're all dealing with right now. But then everything else. So as you know, when you bring on a new employee, a lot of the things you're giving them are just pamphlets or information. Same thing for your minor employees. Things on harassment, all of the EDD forms about disability, paid family leave. You do, of course, have to report this individual as a new hire. So make sure you or your payroll provider or your bookkeeper is doing the DE-34 form, which is that report of new employees. And then, of course, all of the other notices about time off, domestic violence, Wage Theft Prevention Act, that's the 2810.5 form, your wage theft notice. Everybody gets one of those. I don't think you'll have any minors that are receiving commission, but maybe. If so, they have to have a written agreement as well. So everything applies. So you're just going to give them that stack of new hire paperwork, just as you would for any other employee. So let's talk about the I-9 form, because I know it can feel a little intimidating when you're bringing on minors, but it's really just the same. There are a couple of exceptions here that might make it a little easier for you, because not all kids have the documentation. You know, you might have kids that don't have driver's license yet. So when you're doing that I-9 form, an identification and a school ID card can be used for List B, because that normally has their picture on it, their little school ID that they have. Now, if for some reason a minor can't provide a document from List A or List B, a parent can help establish identity if they just don't have any of those documents that they can bring in. So a parent can come in to help establish the identity of that individual. So that's a little different thing when it comes to I-9s. Now, if you haven't checked out the I-9 form lately, it has changed in the past couple of years. So the first reminder, of course, is to always make sure you are downloading the most current form. You can access that on our website, employers.org, as well. But the other thing I wanted to tell you about, you may not know about, is this very handy handbook for employers that is available to you out on their website. It's called the M247, as it's known, but it is a really nice resource. The USCIS has done a great job of putting this together, and it really takes you step by step when you're bringing on employees and what forms are accepted, because I know it's been a bit confusing. They've changed it a little bit in the past few years. And we always recommend that you take a look at that handbook, and of course, make sure that you are using the most recent Form I-9, because it is required for everybody on your payroll. And here's what it looks like if you haven't seen it lately. They've changed it really to a one-page form. It used to be 2 pages. Now it's a one-pager, which is quite handy. So keep in mind, this is what the form should look like. And as a side note, because we've had a lot of questions on I-9s lately, we are going to be doing some webinars on I-9s and what you can do if you receive a notice or a visit from immigration officials. But as a reminder, you do want to make sure you're taking a look at all of your I-9s and conducting an audit. For those of you that are CEA members, we do have a toolkit on that as well. But I would recommend, this is a good opportunity for everyone to double check all of your I-9s and make sure they are up to date. But here's what the current I-9 form looks like. As you all know, your employee on their first day of employment, including minors, should fill out section 1. That needs to be completed on their first day of employment. And then within 3 business days, you need to complete section 2. Now, if for some reason a parent needs to come in and establish identity, then they can fill out section 1. So they would fill out the minor's information, they would check that minor box, and in the signature field, they would say minors under the age of 18, and then they would complete the prepare or translator certification field, which is a different page now on the new I-9. And then for section 2, you, the employer, would enter minor under age 18 on list B if they weren't able to come in and do those documents. Now, all of my kids have been able to provide documents because they all have driver's license, and a lot of your minors might be able to as well. But if for some reason you do need a parent to come in and establish identity, that's how you want to do it. So keep that in mind. A couple of other things to remind you about as far as training. As I mentioned, harassment prevention, so very important. If you have 5 or more employees, it's required of all of you, required of you as an employer, and all of your employees need to get through it. So again, it's 1 hour of training every 2 years if they are a non-supervisor, and if they are in a supervisory role, which means they hire, fire, promote, demote, then they need to have 2 hours of training every 2 years. We always recommend you do this as part of new hire orientation, and you want to make sure every 2 years you are retraining your employees, because it is your responsibility as an employer. It does include part-time, seasonal, temporary, all those good things. That training does need to occur within 6 months of the hire date, but I recommend you do it on day 1. If you are hiring seasonal or temporary or other employees who are working less than 6 months, you do have to provide that training within 30 calendar days after the hire date, or within 100 hours worked, whichever comes first. And I know that's very confusing, which is why I would recommend You do it on day one. Check it off. It's only an hour. It's much better for you as an employer to show that you're being proactive and you're getting that training done as part of that new hire orientation process. All right, let's talk about a couple of things to expect when hiring minors. We've talked a little bit about this, but we'll go into it a little bit more, kind of lack of experience, emotional maturity, restrictions on hours. So lack of experience, as I was saying before, a lot of these kids have never worked besides doing chores that they hated doing for their parents around their own home. So this is kind of a new thing. Going into a work site can be overwhelming. Going in and having really set established hours and responsibilities can be tricky for kids. So you might need to do a little more training, but that's where, again, I would recommend start from day one, be very proactive, be very positive with it, and kids will normally respond very well because a lot of the kids who are out there working, they want to work, they want to earn money, they're working on independence, and so they want to do well, right? They want to try to do their best. When it comes to and I meant to mention this, I'm glad I added this extra bullet. When it comes to references, when you're trying to hire somebody, and kids maybe don't have a lot of professional references, honestly, but you can ask for references from teachers or coaches or their school counselor. That can be a great way if you're ever looking for references on their application, because they may not have worked a job before, but they might have been a superstar on their lacrosse team and their coach writes a letter of reference for them. So keep that in mind too. But when it comes to that training, just remember a little extra in the beginning can probably be a good payoff for you in the end. Now, another thing, emotional maturity. A lot of these kids, if you have teenagers, if you remember being a teenager, right? It's a little bit of a tricky time sometimes. So they are trying to figure out who they are as individuals. They are very susceptible to influence, which is why I recommend you set a very positive experience. If you have a mentor that you're assigning or a buddy that you're assigning to minors, to teenagers, I would recommend it's your superstar. And you want to make sure it's somebody who's going to set a very good example. And again, oftentimes that will really set that person up for success. So kind of think big picture when you're looking at this. Make sure, again, you've got that established training, you've got a written training plan, you've got that person that they can talk to, because a lot of times you do need to spell some of these things out for kids just because they've never had that experience before. But again, it can set them up for a really successful job and work experience with you. And so it can help you out as well. When it comes to restrictions on hours, I would love to say, oh, I have one slide that summarizes everything for you. It would be impossible. It varies a lot based on their age. If they're 14, 15, 16, 17, there are different daily and weekly hour maximums based on school being in session. Also based on the day of the week. If it's a day before a school day, there's different restrictions versus a school day or a weekend. So we have to look at that. But the good news is your work permit is going to tell you everything. So you don't have to do the guesswork. We do have another link Anna's going to drop in just a couple of minutes here on a future slide that will talk about some of those restrictions if you have to look at them. But you want to make sure you are really, really paying attention to those restrictions and pay attention to what is on that work permit, because you do not want to violate child labor laws. That will not be good for you. And I will also tell you, just based on my own kids' experience, sometimes the establishments don't pay attention to those work permits. So pay attention. You want to make sure you're staying within those guidelines. There are age restrictions, as I mentioned. There are also industry restrictions, depending on the industry that you work in. Kids under the age of 18 cannot work in hazardous roles. So a couple of those big examples, anything dealing with manufacture and storage of explosives, including ammunition. They cannot drive for you or be an outside helper. An outside helper is the type of individual that, say there's a big semi backing up, they can't be the person behind the semi going, yep, a little bit farther, keep coming, keep coming. They can't do that. They can't have anything to do with vehicles, really. They need to be very, very cautious with that. Anything that has to do with a lot of machinery, metal forming machinery, even some bakery machinery, you have to be very careful about. So make sure, again, you're familiar with your particular industry, those restrictions. The younger a child is, the more restrictions there are, obviously. Make sure that if you are, especially if you're a multi-state employer, if you're looking at federal versus state, whichever is the most protective and restrictive for that child, those are the ones you want to follow. And of course, there's other restrictions. And again, based on where you're working, if you're a restaurant, if you're a gas station, there are going to be different restrictions about what employees have access to or what minors have access to as far as alcohol, lottery tickets, those kind of things. Be very cautious with that. You don't want to break the rules on that. A couple of other requirements when it comes to managers and people who are managing your employees. You might have heard of mandated reporter training. This is something new in the past couple of years. So maybe it's something you haven't encountered if you haven't had minors working for you, but they have clarified, and this was in 2021, that they added this mandated reporter for businesses. If you have 5 or more employees, they kind of break it down into human resource employees, which is a very broad definition, and supervisors of minors who should receive this training. So keep in mind that the idea is for individuals, for employees, if they need to report something that might be going on in a minor's life, that they are prepared and they know how to do that training and report that. So this is for a human resource employee, again, broad definition. This is someone who is involved in that employee's working relationship. This could be someone who can report or have information reported to them. And so if it's ever in doubt about what a human resource employee, it really could be a supervisor if an employee could report something that's going on to them or being reported to them. When it comes to general supervision, if they need or they should receive this training if an individual could report sexual abuse to them, here's what I would recommend. Anyone who is supervising a minor should receive this training. It's only an hour. CEA has it. I would recommend that you send those individuals to it so that they are aware that they can report this if they need to, and they know what to do if an employee reports something to them. So here is that kind of definition on human resource employees. This is somebody who can discuss complaints of misconduct, grievances, harassment, discrimination, etc., those kind of things. That's kind of a supervisory role, even though they call it an HR role. And so you want to make sure if your supervisors can accept complaints of misconduct or harassment, that they get this training. So again, I would just recommend send everybody. It's just an hour. Much better and safer for you to do that and make sure that they're getting the training that they need. All right, and I wanted to double check. I think I saw a question or two come in. So let me just pop over here real quick before we start to wrap it up. We had a question come in about the alcohol manufacturing industry. So I would double check, Anna, thank you so much, dropped in a link to the child labor law manual. That is in the chat box. I would take a look at that and look under for any of your industries that you're in. Look up your specific industry. It will give you a lot of guidance on what can or cannot be done. And who can or cannot work for you, or any restrictions if they're working for you. So take a look at that specifically. You can also, of course, always call the state and speak to them about it, but that California Child Labor Law Manual is very thorough and they have a lot of information. So I would recommend that's probably the best thing to do. Anna also dropped in a link to the mandated reporter training. We have that coming up April 16th. Again, I would recommend go ahead and have your supervisors and managers sign up for that and attend that. It's really the best option for you there. All right, just to wrap it up here. So thanks for hanging in there for the whole time. As I mentioned in the very beginning, job descriptions. We recommend them for everybody. Certainly for minors, it's a very good tool when you're interviewing them, going through that process so they know what's expected, you know what's expected. We call it just a life cycle document, employment life cycle. Determine the needs that you need. Is it a 2-day-a-week position? Is this a 4-day-a-week position? Keeping in mind those hour and work restrictions you're going to be dealing with. Is it just for the summer? Is it just for a couple of weeks here and there? See what's going to work for you. Make sure you put together a good hiring process and a good onboarding process. So clearly communicate with that minor when they're going to be working for you, expectations, roles, and responsibilities, all those good things. Remember to tell them the day you want them to report, the time you want them to report, and who they're reporting to. And I know many of you might have apps that you're using now. I know both of my kids have apps where they check in. Make sure the individual knows how to access that so that they can find out when they are working, who they report to, all that kind of good stuff. Make sure your training is up to date as well as your new hire checklist. Our minors get everything that everybody else gets. And make sure that orientation and that onboarding, you're going to spend a little extra time to make sure you really do set that person up for success. And then really figure out how you can use this to your advantage too. Again, it's an early recruiting method. This is a great way for you to help employees get their first job. They're starting out. And who knows, they could end up working for you for several summers or for several years. It can go on and on. There's a lot of great options out there for you. As I mentioned before, so you've got the hotline, you've got the number in the beginning and the end of these slides. It'll pop up for you in just a second. But if you feel that you need a little more help, or you would like us to help you put together a handbook, or you would like to have some individualized training, or you want full access to our website, I would encourage you to take a look at an individual CEA membership. We've got a couple of different options for you. They're all in this slide. But what's new and fancy is we have a monthly membership option. So if it's something you just want to try out for a couple of months, you can sign up for that. It's a great way to see what CEA is all about, because we really do want to help you manage your employees, help you run your business, because we know it's very difficult to stay compliant with those things in California when it comes to labor law issues. And then I've got your training codes here for you. If you are an HR professional and trying to get your 60 hours of continuing ed, you want to make sure you add these codes. We've got 698523 if you are an HRCI person, and your SHRM codes is R25-AGVVJ. So make sure you are getting your extra credit. And I think I am all caught up in questions. So I will turn it back over to Anna. And Anna, thank you so much for dropping in all those links. Thank you everybody for attending. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time or talking to you on the hotline.
Thank you, Mary. I mean, I think you covered everything. We do have a couple extra minutes here. So while you have direct access to Ms. Bradford here, who is our Senior HR Director, really take advantage, drop any outstanding questions into the chat or that Q&A box. But in the meantime, I do want to remind you that we do have that very brief survey. I promise 5 questions, mostly multiple choice, about 60 to 90 seconds to complete. But you can either scan that QR code. Mary, if you can maybe move your mouse. I don't know if that's going to impact scanning it.
Hold on, let me try. Sorry, let me move the slide.
Oh, you're all good.
Is it good? Is that better?
It's your cursor, your mouse cursor is on the QR code.
Is it gone now? Because
maybe. If it works, great. If not, once you click out of Zoom, a browser window should also pop up, and all you have to do is click opt-in. So you can choose your own adventure there. But we really encourage you to share your feedback, because in turn, it will ultimately provide you with the best training and resources that we can possibly provide you with. So again, we want to thank Central Valley Regional HR Hotline for providing the sponsorship for this series of trainings this year. Really encourage you to take advantage of your appropriate HR hotline. You'll see them on the screen right now. I am trying to pull up your next, pardon me for not having this ready for you right now, but I'm going to drop a link into the chat for the next training coming up April 23rd. This is top 10 ways to stay out of course. This is another really amazing compliance focused training coming up on April 23rd in the lunch hour. So grab your lunch, join us. Again, sponsored by them. So really encourage you to take advantage of these resources provided. But it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So I think we'll give you 4 minutes back to your day. Want to thank you again for joining us live. Thank you again to Central Valley, Valerie and your entire team behind the scenes there for providing this. And thank you, Mary, for sharing your time and expertise with us. And we look forward to seeing you all on April 23rd. Cheers.